Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the April 17th, 2025 Newmarket School Board meeting. We will start, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're setting records for members of the public present tonight. Would anybody like to step up to the microphone for public comment? Just please let us know who you are.
Hi, I'm Joanne Lazarus. I'm a proud public school teacher, and I live in Newmarket at 170 Exeter Road. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of myself and a platoon of other like-minded individuals. I sit on the NEA New Hampshire Executive Board, and as such I was chosen to go to Detroit for their annual leadership summit. And when I was there, I met this group of North Carolina educators who about 15 years ago, their schools were heavily under attack. Their budgets were cut by 50%, and they were the ones that started the Red for Ed campaign. And they were able to stop a few things, and they said, we need to do more. So they got together with a group of individuals, data statisticians, who helped them figure out their best message to go. And they have now expanded their work, and it's called Public School Strong. Public School. And based on what's been happening in our world, there are so many things that I just like wake up and go, ah, and then the next one. And so I had to sift through and go, all right, what's the most important to me? And to me, it is our children and it is public schools. And without public schools, we will not have a nation of educated people. And we all know that dumb people are easier to control. And so I have thrown myself in wholeheartedly with the Public School Strong organization after I did my due diligence and researched. And so last night it went live. I have our the New Hampshire Seacoast area site as part of the Public School Strong. And so there is a little
QR code?
Thank you. That would be the word.
I knew what you were pointing at.
What do I know about ladders? That you can go to, or you can go to publicschoolstrong.org, and they'll ask you where you are, and you just type in New Hampshire, and it will come up the New Hampshire Seacoast chapter of this. And I posted about Saturday's events that are happening. I'll be in Concord. There are others, of course, in Hampton and in Portsmouth. And any other legislation news I'm putting on there, things that we need to work together to try and keep the focus on public schools and stop some of the craziness. So thank you, and if you want to scan it, I'll leave it here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes?
If I could just,
Yeah.
bring up a point of order, a little bit late, but I didn't want to interrupt. Anything, public comments need to be on an agenda item unless we vote to allow it.
Yep, good
and
point.
if we do vote to allow it, then that should really be our policy for the rest of the board seating. So,
It's like this guy was chair or something once.
we just speak about policies.
Any other members of the public? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tony Weinstein, 13 Moody Point Drive. And I wanted to come and introduce myself. I came to a meeting, I think it was in January, maybe it was December, and I had met with the superintendent at that time too. I'm a state rep, I'm one of 4 state reps that represent Newmarket. And as Joanne Lazarus just mentioned, there's a little bit of craziness that might be happening at the state level. So I wanted to just make myself available. And I also serve on the Education Funding Committee, which certainly impacts Newmarket and education in New Hampshire. And then there are a slew of other bills that will impact all of us, and certainly the SAU and SAUs throughout the state. So I'm available if anyone ever needs to contact me. I can give you all my information. I do send out weekly legislative updates.
I read them religiously.
And again, if I can answer any questions, I'm happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public want to offer comments?
I can't hear what's being said, and I can't hear what the speaker is saying, sitting here in the audience. So I don't,
Can you hear the chair?
Yeah, can you hear us, or?
I can hear you,
So
but I
this-
couldn't
All right,
hear
this
Gary.
microphone.
I couldn't hear Tony,
Okay,
so.
All right,
all right, thank you for
thank you.
bringing that to our attention. Boom, easy, easy.
I don't think it's getting hot.
Any other members of the public for public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment at 5:21, and we will move into public correspondence. Did anyone on the board receive any public correspondence this week?
No.
No. Nope.
And neither did I, so, all right, thank you. Committee updates. Any committees met since we were last together? Committee updates or board member comments, either one in this section.
I'll be attending the master plan in May, on May 14th, I believe it is. I missed last week's.
Okay.
I didn't realize it was there.
The only other thing is the Teacher Growth and Evaluation Committee meeting is being rescheduled from the beginning of May towards the end of May. So Gary and I will have an update for the next school board meeting, but
Okay,
following one, I think it's decided on May 22nd, so.
thank you.
Did you unmute your
I'm
phone?
unmuted.
No, I
I'm
can
just
hear you
not-
through the speaker.
I'll just hold it when I talk. Is that better? Okay.
I just meant to bring up a potential agenda item. I think I brought it up, or I meant to bring it up with you folks. At some point, we may want to consider having a joint town school board safety protocol meeting that we've had a few times in the distant past. I think, Dan, you're probably the only person who's had that, other than me.
Yeah, we did it, yeah, it was the first year I was on the board. The PD came in and
Yeah.
we both the council and the school board got an overview of some of the safety preparations and precautions that they make. So that's a good idea. I'll reach out to the council chair. Thank you. Any other comments or committee updates from the board? I was just going to add one myself. Speaking solely on behalf of myself, I do appreciate the level of community engagement I am seeing right now. And I'm not specifically just speaking to tonight, although it's nice to have Joanne and Tony come in, but we're in a difficult environment at the moment to be a public school district. And we have, or not just the school district, but the town in general, we have a lot of changes coming at us very quickly, not just from the federal government, from Concord as well. The state government is, experiencing a fair bit of turmoil as they go through the budget cycle and all the other bills moving through. So just wanted to say that I really appreciate the level of passion and support that I see in the community for the school district and the town, for that matter, as well. I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's patience. Not unlike everyone else, we're rolling with the punches to an extent. We're finding things out day by day that are changing. And we are working to try to navigate all that and to help our community and our staff, and particularly our students, navigate all of that. So, we appreciate the support, the understanding, the patience, and as always, members of the public, please feel free to reach out to us with comments or concerns whenever you have them.
On that same note, I just have to say, I thought that this weekend. I only got to go to one of the performances of the play, but it was just so wonderful amidst all of this to see. I mean, I think, were they all sold out? I know Sunday was sold out. To see people gather together to support Newmarket students and kind of have a little bit of time to celebrate the students and celebrate as a community and maybe put some of the other stuff on the back burner momentarily. So, and just what I had said before when you couldn't hear me, I was just giving an update that the Teacher Growth and Evaluation Committee that is looking to pilot an evaluation tool is delayed, rescheduled from the beginning of May to the end of May. That was all.
Can I add?
Yes, please.
And as a newer resident in Newmarket, I enjoyed the play immensely on Friday night and seeing the community come out and just celebrate everything the kids and the teachers do. So, and I'm finding the town and the school district itself to be very positive with, just as you say, with strong engagement. And I just want to add that as a newer resident, that's what I observe. So thank you.
Thank you. Last call for board comments and committee updates. Going once, going twice. Student representative report. I hear there are fun things going on.
Yes. So softball had their first game against PCA Monday, and they won 6-3. They have a game tomorrow versus New away at 4, and then we have 3 home games next week, all at 4. So Monday, Farmington, Wednesday, Epping, and Friday, Franklin, I believe, or something like that. Baseball, first game against PCA got canceled, but they had a game yesterday versus Pittsfield, and they won 34-0. Away game tomorrow versus New at 4 as well, and then they have a home game Monday at 4 versus Farmington. JV baseball is currently away playing Exeter tonight, and then track, the April 12th meet at Pelham got canceled due to weather. So their first meet is now Saturday at Sanborn at 10 in the morning, and then also they have a meet next Thursday in Laconia at 4. As for some clubs, SALT is still planning on doing a leadership presentation to middle school about the takeaways from a leadership conference some SALT representatives went to. Tuesday, instead of a regular meeting, members of SALT got together to go over district athletic policies we currently have and to see if there are any changes that we could make or just feedback we can give so they align with Vision of a Graduate and the pillars SALT established last year. Honor Society volunteers are helping out the rec Saturday morning for the annual Easter egg hunt. Net Zero, May 7th will be bike/walk to school day. Interact Club is still currently planning Newmarket Cares Day, so we'll see when that comes out. Student Council is planning a surprise for Teacher Appreciation Week, so can't say too much about that. And then the drama shows play Little Shop of Horrors performed over the weekend, and like Lonnie was saying, it was great. All sold out shows pretty much, and it was just great to see everyone get together for that and support. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you.
Let me in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just thank you and SALT for going over the policies. That's a great idea to have them look at policies that are directly applicable, or more directly applicable to students. And
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's anybody who's involved with it will tell you it is a huge body of work to go through all of the different things that the schools and the district have in writing, and just with an eye towards, does this really align with the Vision of a Graduate or not? So yes, big appreciation to SALT for doing that.
And if I could also add that came about out of the last policy committee meeting we had back in March, where the recommendation was to take the student activities policy and incorporate Vision of a Graduate related language. And so Jamie Hayes brought it back to the group, and that's really how you get that to happen. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you. All right. What have we from the superintendent this evening?
Well, I guess I'd like to start where a number of people have commented tonight. One of the things that I have struggled with, there are so many issues right now challenging public education, challenges to funding from potential state legislation, challenges from federal government on grant funding, challenges about what constitutes, meeting students' rights and so forth within the school. And it really has caused me to spend a lot of time thinking about, like, why did I become a public educator? And I think one of the things that can't be lost in all this is the reason public schools exist is to be the great equalizer of society. What we are about is providing opportunity for all kids. We're about making sure all kids are included and making sure that the access to an education is provided to every kid. And you will not see anybody in the Newmarket schools denying any student access to anything that they need to succeed, and that is what we are about. And I'll talk about it later in this meeting, but there's been a lot of talk recently about the Title VI assurances and what some people call the loyalty pledge that is being required of universities and schools across the country. But I just think it's important that we remind ourselves that what we are about, and regardless of what some of these noisy things are, the bottom line is we in Newmarket are going to take care of our kids. And regardless of what regardless of ICE actions or Title VI changes or Title IX changes, we're going to be about the kids. And so I know there's been a lot of conversation. I have to be honest, I don't do social media because it would drive me crazy if I did. But I know there's been an awful lot of conversation about the lawsuits that are being filed challenging the Title VI assurances. And I just want people to know that from a Newmarket perspective, no matter what happens, it doesn't matter. We are going to take care of kids. So moving on from that, and maybe to a less emotional topic, I did want to just share some other things with you. I was pleased last week that HB 675 was pulled from the House budget proposal. I think that was great news. For those of you who don't know, HB 675 was the tax cap on public schools. And it's important to realize that it's not gone. It still could be brought back to life in the Senate. But if that were to pass, that would have some fairly significant consequences to small schools like Newmarket, and frankly, just about every school in the state, because what it would be doing is telling us how much we can spend on our schools. And one of the things that New Hampshire has long been about is local control. And so I was pleased to see that it didn't make it out of the House, but it is not dead yet. My understanding is that the Senate will be kind of taking it up on May 6th. And last week, as a sort of an outgrowth of the decision the board made at the last meeting to join on to that letter with the fair funding, the New Hampshire Fair Funding Project, I had a meeting with Carly Perkins, who's one of the policy people for that, and we spent some time talking about it. And she is definitely encouraging us to take the Newmarket information and make sure that that is submitted as testimony to the Senate, because I do think we need to make sure that doesn't happen. Because I will tell you, looking at because the tax cap immediately will basically be tied to the consumer price index. 2 years in, it switches to more an enrollment-based calculation. And what will happen, if you look at what will happen in Newmarket 7 years from now, if that extrapolation plays out, we are in a deep, deep, deep hole. I mean, to give you an idea of what it means, our current budget, we would have to reduce it by about $3 million over the next 10 years. And in current dollars, I'm not talking about inflation-adjusted dollars. I'm talking real dollars that would have to come out of our budget. So it's important that not happen. So clearly, I think the signing on of the board to that letter asking for fair funding, very important thing, and obviously we still have work to do on that. changing the subject to more cheery things, because we do talk about fun things sometimes too. If you haven't had a chance to, I would encourage everybody to check out at the elementary school the art project that was just installed over there. They had an artist in residence during the month of March, Mark Raganese. I pronounced that right, didn't I? They have Mark Raganese. And I can't even describe it. It's just so incredibly colorful and dynamic and interesting. And the cool thing about it is every single kid in the entire school had a part in that project. So that every kid can walk in and say, that's my piece, that's my piece. So it's, when you talk about inclusion, you can't be more inclusive than that. And then the last thing, which is kind of boring but exciting to me, is that I just wanted to mention that for next year, we will be launching an online registration portal for student registration. We will be moving away from the hundreds of pieces of paper that everybody faces. So what it will mean eventually for all families is when you go to re-register, you won't have to rewrite everything. You'll just go in and say, yeah, is this still true? And then you can file it. So anyway, to come, but I wanted to mention that because it's an exciting change for the school district. And thank you, Jason, for all your work on that.
Do you see Gary and I squinting at you, going, just in time?
Glaring
Yeah,
at you.
I waited until you guys were done. I said, you didn't like the old-fashioned way.
The field trips too, the field trip forms, that will be so glorious if that is incorporated.
Yeah, when you have multiple kids, not having to do it multiple times. Yeah, it's all that. All that's good.
Thank you. So, I was expecting something more. I think I lost my place. Jana, I believe you have the floor for a considerable number of consecutive items here. So why don't you start us off with the what we need to do with the school repair and maintenance trust fund?
Sure. Hi, thank you for having me tonight. A couple of things on the agenda. The first one is a request and a reminder to the board to schedule a public hearing. As part of the budget process last year, we planned deliberately to take a drawdown of the school technology expendable trust fund to help mitigate the impact of our budget. So in order for that to happen, anytime we take something out of a trust fund, we are required by law to hold a public hearing. In the past, you may remember, and for new members, typically it runs concurrent with the regular board meeting. The chair will simply open it up for public comment, leave it open for a couple minutes, and then close it, and then the board can vote on taking that money out of a capital reserve because the board is the agent to expend on all of those capital reserve funds. So there are two that we're looking for transfers that should be available as of July 1st. The information was in your packet. We're looking for a repair and maintenance trust transfer, and we are also looking for a transfer of $35,000 from the school technology expendable trust fund. So I would ask that the board kind of plan which agenda to put that on, and I can certainly, we will work up at our end to make sure that the agenda reflects all the things that need to happen during the meeting. And thank you for your support with that. Makes it easy to have it all ready to go so that we don't have to bother everybody in July when we're all thinking of other things. So does anyone have any questions about that?
I was just wondering if it might be useful to quickly go over the trusts. I understand they are in the quarterly presentation, but I don't know, for the new board members, maybe just explaining the differentiation of what the trusts are and how they can be expended.
Sure. So in order, as you know, we have an appropriated budget. It's appropriated in a cycle, and if it's unexpended, the intent is what's unexpended goes back to the public. The only exception to that is if the legislative body, meaning the residents of Newmarket, vote to create a revolving fund that spans those years. So we have 6 such funds for different purposes, all defined for different purposes. And over the years, they've been funded in a variety of different ways. Sometimes they'll be on the warrant as a standalone warrant article to vote to raise and appropriate. Other times, the board will elect to put them on saying, if we have unexpended budget at the end of the year, which has already been appropriated, let's move that money into these capital reserves. We've worked extremely hard on a capital improvement and maintenance plan, a 25-year plan that we go every year and we sit down and we plan it out. And we've estimated our cash flow needs to maintain all of the things that need to happen. You know, if in 2026 a roof goes, we want to have the money available so we don't have to go back to the taxpayers and raise and appropriate that kind of money. So these funds, some of them, 2 of them are for maintenance. We have one for utilities. We have one for special education services that are unanticipated if we get a student that moves in. We have the IT fund that I mentioned, and then we have a small insurance and benefits trust, which in the event that our rates happen to change, as
Gee, I wonder when that
I don't know, you know, wow, that was so far in the future. We have a fund that we can come to the board and say, we are upside down based on what we budgeted and we need to access those funds. So that's basically the trust funds in a nutshell.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that?
Thank you.
All right, hearing none, next we'll move into the fiscal year 24-25 Q3 financial report.
Okay.
We're on the home stretch.
Yeah, we are. We're coming down the other side of the year. So as you know, these are all up in your packet, and I'll kind of hit the highlights. Certainly, if you have questions on any specific item, please don't hesitate to speak up. So as you can see, basically at this point in the year, we estimate that we have just over 800,000 of our full budget. That works out to be 2.94% remaining that's unallocated or unencumbered for a specific purpose. I just want to remind the board again that it's kind of important for us to end the year with a balance because we made a decision to fund our capital reserve warrant article from remaining funds instead of raising and appropriating. So we certainly want to make sure we have enough money to transfer over into that to maintain our cash flow. That was kind of a strategic decision. Again, we spent a lot of time talking during the budget cycle about how to mitigate the impact of the tax burden on Newmarket residents. And this was one lever we thought we could pull this year to make that happen. So this is about where we expect, maybe a little bit leaner than we've been in the past. But at this point, it does look like we should have ample reserves to fund those articles come the end of the year, unless something catastrophic were to happen between now and then. Moving on to revenues. Revenues, as you look at that, the detail of the revenues, many of them are right at 75%. We receive the lion's share of our revenues from the town of Newmarket as a current appropriation or the state education tax, and those come in monthly. So when we're 3/4 of the way through the year, we're 3/4 of the way through our revenue. We will be presenting to you, spoiler alert, in about a month, our interim financial statements where we spend an awful lot of time going really deep down in the details to try and give you the best estimate we have of what we think we're going to end the year with. It's a little early as of March 31st to start talking about that because we still have some things that we're working on. But I hope to have a fairly decent estimate for you in about a month. And that will help guide some of your decisions about what you might want to do as we come into the end of the year and thinking ahead strategically. As you know from my previous presentation in the food service fund, we had a surplus at the end of last year. We were required to spend it down. And we are unfortunately not able to use it to offset student debt. That's not an allowable purpose. That's not our choice, that's USDA. So what we have done is try to use those funds to provide enhancements and benefits that benefits all kids in our school. And you know, we've installed a new water bottle station in the NES cafeteria. We're upgrading our software for the point of sale services so that at some point we might be able to bring in automated vending machines that kids can type their number into and they could get a smart snack, you know, an eligible snack, helping kids out that are hungry, maybe not just at meal times. There's a picture in here that I hope you have a chance to see of our fruit and vegetable serving bar. We're supremely proud of that.
Oh,
We
yeah.
were able to bring in into NES. Kids can self-serve
Awesome.
whatever they like, and every day they have a variety of things to pick from. They can go back up, they can go as many times as they want to get those vegetables. So
Great.
that's something that we feel really great that we can offer to kids, encourage them to eat new fresh foods and just give them additional healthy things to eat as part of our meals. We've had a couple of pop-up chef events, both at NES and junior, senior high. The most recent one was a taco day where we get a guest chef that comes in and prepares different types of tacos. And we will have another one coming up. I believe it's another macaroni and cheese type of bar where kids can do add-ins to mac and cheese. So that will be coming up too. Impact fees continue to grow. Impact fees, for those of you who aren't familiar, the town of Newmarket adopted a plan to collect impact fees from new developments in the town. And those impact fees that are gathered are split out by the departments in the town. So Parks and Rec will have some available, school, et cetera. We have a standard period of time to use those. If we don't, we have to give them back to the builder or the contractor or whoever built that. We've done a very good job of utilizing every penny before those dates come. And you can see in the back of the report, where we're at. We're well up over $200,000 in funding. So that is another thing that the board can consider, looking at and utilizing as part of a strategic budgeting plan. In fact, we're almost at 270,000, so that's
Wow.
quite a bit. And then finally, as you start looking at the back of the report, we've got our expenditures by categories with explanations of variances, so you can kind of see if we're coming in lower than we thought or higher than we thought. We tried to explain why those numbers are there and how that is reflected. Our food service expenditures, you can see that we are expecting to come in with a negative variance. That ties into that required spend down plan I mentioned earlier. We are deliberately overspending that fund so that we can comply with the requirement. And as I mentioned, revenues, we're about 75% of the way through, at 3/4 of the way through the year, so that looks about what we would expect at this time of the year. So at this point, I'll open it up to questions for you. Oh, and on the final page, the trust funds that I just spoke about, you can kind of see all of those trusts and the ending balances in each one. That is money that we have available to perform those functions I listed out earlier. So without any other questions on that, or?
I don't have a question, but my first grader gets school lunch like 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
Marks it on the calendar. And I guess it was maybe last week, she came home and told me that I needed to buy orange and yellow peppers. I happen to have a red and a green one. And she said, no, they need to be orange or yellow. So now, looking at that picture,
Now you
I'm
get it.
guessing that's where that came from.
Are there any vegetables you want your daughter to eat that we should stock in?
Red and green peppers.
Well, what I love about that veggie bar is, peer pressure can be a negative. Peer pressure can also be a really great positive if you're trying to instill some healthy habits. So kids sit down next to another kid, seeing them eat one of these things, and they're always more willing to try it. And so some kids don't go home to a whole lot of vegetables in their fridge. And so if we can offer them at school, as Todd alluded to earlier, it's about taking care of kids. That's what we're going to do. So
Wonderful.
that's a wonderful thing. I'll share that with Stephanie. She'll love it.
I may have missed it, I apologize. Could you explain what the impact fees can be used for?
Could you say that again, Gary?
I tried moving it up here.
Yeah.
It didn't work. Can you explain what the impact fees can be used for?
Yes. Yes, so impact fees, it's per statute and per a plan that the town of Newmarket had to write at the time. So they can be used for any purpose that expands or provides an enhancement it's supposed to be based on population growth or an expanse of a new program or something that we offered differently than what we did. It can't be used to replace a failing roof, but it could be used, and in fact, we did use it to put some picnic tables and to pretty up the courtyard out in the high school here, because that basically made a relatively unusable space into some more additional usable space that kids and staff can access. So that's kind of the stuff we can look at. It can be used for if we decide to repurpose a certain space into something entirely different that provides additional access or resources for our programming, we can probably do those types of things. But yeah, so it's definitely something you can expand a facility if you needed to. There's a lot of different things that we can do with that. If we ever decided to develop something across the street in that on the other side by the annex, that we could use this for these funds for those purposes too.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And if I could just a reminder that the two warrants that we voted on to deposit into the trust funds, what was $200,000 for the capital improvement plan and $65,000 into the special ed.
Yes,
Fund,
special ed,
correct?
yep, that's
Yeah,
correct.
so we got to just keep in mind that 265,000
Yep.
is a number that whatever's there, you want to subtract that, because we've already decided as a community to make that deposit.
Yeah.
Thank you for the reminder. Any other questions about the Q3 financial report? All right, one more thing and we can let you go, Jana.
Okay.
We had asked, as we have two new board members who don't have a great deal of experience in town government in the past, we thought if you could just spend a few minutes and remind everybody or introduce everybody to what the budgeting process, how that goes, what the flow of it is over time, that we thought that would be beneficial.
Yeah, sure. We actually develop a formal budgeting calendar as we go through the process. This is kind of like the abridged version where we've taken out a lot of the internal steps just to kind of give you an idea of the whole cycle. So as crazy as it sounds, in a couple of months, we will be starting to draft our budget for 26-27. So we already have 25-26 is already in the books. It's going to start July 1st, but we start planning this far in advance. So that typically starts, and it did last year, I think it was in July, that the board started to talk about their budgeting goals. And that is extremely helpful to us on our side because we do a lot of work to try and align with those goals. And last year, we had a goal of keeping our budget increase in the operating fund under 2%. We were able to do that by strategically, making some decisions and by, carefully planning our budget out. So we'll be coming back to the board to ask you for guidance as to what you would like us to align ourselves to this year, what would be your goals for us to do. I know it's very challenging when people ask you to say, like, well, what's the number, what's the increase? But it's really important for us to understand where you feel the temperature of the community is, as you are ultimately responsible for those, and letting us know we don't think the public could support more than X, and so that really does help us a lot. So I'm sure you'll have some discussions, and certainly in the board workshop we'll talk more about programs and how we can align things to that. So that usually starts in July. And then there's a big chunk of things that happen probably from July and August up to the middle of September. The administrative team, we have a bunch of steps we get together and we start talking about staffing and planning and programs and aligning everything that we do, of course, to the vision of a graduate, because that's what we're here to do. And then starting in late September, early October, we start meeting with department heads to individually review Todd and I sit with each department head, we review every line item. And we go through and we look at, is this something that aligns to vision of a graduate? Is this something that we need and it supports what we're doing? And it's a very comprehensive process, and every single line item in there we basically discuss. And then the goal is that by October, around the 16th, 17th, we have an initial budget work session with you, at least we did last year, and each department head will kind of discuss their budget, explain what we're doing. We kind of go over all of the numbers that we're looking at, so the board can think about, does this align with what you're looking for us to do? And then with about a month, you have some discussions and things. We have a couple meetings, but usually by November 6th, we're presenting, based on your feedback, the final budget in public, in front of the board. And then right before Thanksgiving, you usually vote to adopt that budget, because we then pass it off to the budget committee. They deliberate, and they usually we present to them in December, leading up to a public hearing, which they are required to do. Last year, it was shortly after the turn of the year. So probably this year, first week of January. They vote it. We put it out for people to look at and review. Our first deliberative session this year is actually going to fall in January, if my calculations are correct, the last day of January. And then that's the first part, where you have the deliberative session. People can come and weigh in and talk about raising or lowering amounts. And then whatever's decided comes out of that day goes on to the paper warrant. And in March, people go to the polls and they vote. So it's the same every year, but it seems like we have a lot that we do in a very short period of time to get to that place. And then once it's voted in March, we start our preparations, and come July 1st, we're working off of that budget that was voted.
As a school district, we're almost continuously operating in 3 budget years at the same time, because you're the one you're in, the one you're about to enter into, and the one you're planning for, and it's just a continuous thing. So it's a lot of work, but fortunately we've been able to bring some good budgets before the community.
Yep, and we do a great job. All the members of the administrative team have a role in working together and crafting things, and if we have a goal that we're meeting and somebody has a need in one department, we figure out a way to move the Titanic deck chairs around and get things where we need to be. But so do you have any questions about that, especially for new members? Sounds like a lot.
No questions immediately, but, as we get into it, I might think of some.
Okay, I'll bet. Okay, any other questions from anybody? Okay, all right, well, thank you very much.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Jana. Really,
Go home, Jana.
really appreciate the time. Thank you. All right, Todd, if you could go over for us the memorandums of agreement on health insurance benefit changes.
So I want to just kind of give a broad overview of sort of what brought us here, and then I'll ask for your approval of a couple of MOAs regarding health insurance. A new law, I've talked about this before, SB 297 was proposed that involves the regulation of pooled insurance coverage. Pooled insurance coverage, for those out there that don't know, is basically the mechanism that all municipalities and public schools use to provide good health insurance to our employees. SB 297 tries to regulate that, and in specific, it is regulating the reserve funds that the pooled insurer is required to keep. The number that the law has said that they must keep is between 12 and 16%. This law has not passed yet, by the way, but unfortunately the negative ramifications of the potential have already begun to come to pass. What it means is that pooled insurance covers, like New Hampshire Interlocal Trust, which was the company that, or the entity that Newmarket had selected in negotiations with our teachers union to switch to, they were forced to charge us dramatically higher rates than they had budgeted. They had given us a quote of 6.5% back in October. We built a budget going back to the detail work we do. We plan on a 6.5% increase, and lo and behold, April 3rd rolls around and they said, oops, it was actually 32%, which is a difference of $644,000. We talked about it in our non-meeting last week, or after the last meeting, and I brought it to our union leadership, the concern about it the next day. To both our unions' credits, they immediately said, yeah, there's no question, the school district can absorb $644,000, the potential impact of that, cutting positions and so forth, was not something, and they immediately said, yes, we would be happy to enter into conversation with you. To give you some background, we were trying to be very proactive, which I hope that's the message people realize, is that part of why we're here is because we were trying to be proactive. More than 3 years ago, the conversation about our health insurance came up in para negotiations. And when we negotiated the para contract, they agreed to a provision in the contract that they would be willing to open up discussions of insurance when the teachers union got to that point. So with those two things in mind, in January of 2024, we formed a committee of the district representing both unions and all employee groups and the board, spent 6 months reviewing plans, and the recommendation came back with 2 plans. One was New Hampshire Interlocal Trust or Health Trust. Both those plans are unfortunately under attack by this SB 297. Sadly, last week, New Hampshire Interlocal Trust officially announced that they are going to dissolve as of June 30, 2025. And Health Trust has said that if SB 297 passes as currently stated, they will dissolve as well, meaning that more than 80% of the health insurance providers to municipalities and school districts in the state could suddenly disappear simply because of a law.
Not even a law. So.
Not even a law, a proposed law. But unfortunately, the ramifications are real because you can't sit back and hope something's going to happen. You have to make adjustments. So anyway, bottom line was, on April 7th, we had a meeting of the entire district. Both unions were represented. All employees were invited. I presented the whole issue to the staff, and both unions independently said, yep, we'll put it to a vote of our membership right there and then. Both unions voted like 99% to make the switch because they recognized that it was not feasible to absorb a $644,000 cost. So based on that conversation with both unions, I have an MOA one for each union for the board to consider and hopefully approve tonight, and that will allow us to officially make the change. I would tell you, Jenna and her team are on it. They're already working now that New Hampshire Interlocal doesn't exist, we really don't have an option. I'll be very, very blunt with you. So anyway, I bring that to you tonight for your consideration and hopefully your signatures later on. I do want to mention something, though, that I think on the subject of our proactivity. 2 years ago, we discussed the idea that insurance is an erratic thing, and we decided that we needed to create a trust fund to guard ourselves against unanticipated insurance costs. First year, we put $75,000 in it. The second year, we put $50,000 in it. And there's currently $129,000, and it'll probably be about $130,000 by the time this fiscal year ends. The additional costs of going back to school care is $151,000. That trust fund is certainly one key thing that we can leverage to cover that cost. I will tell you that there are a couple of other things that I'm doing as a precautionary. We have 2 vacant positions that I'm planning not to fill right away. If things break in a more positive direction, we might consider filling them, but there are 2 vacant positions that are not going to be filled currently. One is we have a social worker position that is vacant, and then we have 1 position in our finance office that is vacant. So those are in our budget that we haven't filled yet, and I'm waiting until all the dust settles before we make any determinations about what we do with those positions. And the other thing I want to tell you is I've already started having conversation with the leadership team, and people are extremely creative with coming up with ways to address the shortfalls. So I'm confident we'll be able to absorb the $151,000. I'm not happy about it. Clearly we entered into an agreement with the teachers union hoping that we were realizing real savings in our insurance, and that's clearly turned out to not be the case. But this doesn't have to be a major blow. We have the reserves.
Do we know what the current status? I thought there was maybe going to be something to come out of April 11th, but
we don't know. I mean, it went to April 10th was crossover day, and so it went from the Senate to the House. But at this point, I don't have a status report on exactly what its status is. like I say, though, on April 11th, New Hampshire Interlocal Trust announced their dissolution, which was largely
Yeah.
because they're anticipating that
This will
this is
pass.
going to pass. I frankly, selfishly, I really hope that Health Trust does not dissolve, because what that will mean to health insurance in the state of New Hampshire is still unknown, but there's nobody out there that could absorb 75% of the municipal employees in the state.
That was going to be my question. I mean, we could probably sit here all evening trying to gameplay out what that means, but what's your quick read on, like, how does an entity like a school care suddenly have to absorb this huge percentage of the market that they're,
Well,
how does that even work?
Well, that pooled insurance coverage, in effect, like school care and New Hampshire Interlocal Trust and Health Trust, they're really, they're members. So like in a sense, like because we're into school care, Newmarket is one of the stakeholders of that entity. If Health Trust has 380 schools and municipalities that are covered by it, so in a sense, it's 380 entities. And by the way, the town employees of Newmarket are covered by Health Trust. If they were to disappear, the likelihood is that various associations of the members would then reach out to individual insurance providers and say, give us a price, and try to form their own pools. It would be chaotic, though, and I think it would take a while for the dust to settle and to figure it out. I was talking with Steve Fournier last week, and he's pretty confident that Health Trust, when push comes to shove, some of the amendments that are being discussed in the legislation might cause them to reconsider dissolution. But he also is pretty confident that if that were to happen, that the municipal association would almost immediately form something else. There used to be an entity called, I believe it was LGC, the Local Government Center, that provided insurance to a lot of people, and that went away. But something along that would probably have to form. But again, the chaos it would create in the short term would be significant, because everybody would be like scrambling to figure out, okay, what's that mean to us? So by switching, by the way, to staying with school care, we've basically bought ourselves a year to breathe and figure out what's next, because we don't really know what the landscape of health insurance in the public sector is going to be 6 months from now, until the dust settles. So I would envision what's going to happen is the health committee that met to make the recommendation is going to be doing some homework over the course of the year to figure out what's the best solution for us.
So this is for the year started the year starting July 1
July
this-
1,
of 25.
For the 25-26 school year.
So I guess what I'm wondering is if there's a way to use some of the unspent revenues from 24, 25 year and prepay, into the following year's insurance expenditures.
I think we'd have to investigate that. You want to speak to that, Janice, since you're still here, even though I told you to go home?
Yeah,
I just had to hear about health insurance one more time. That is a very creative idea, and it's a great idea, but unfortunately, municipal law is such that you have to expend in the same year in which you receive the benefit. So the only thing that would allow us to do that is the capital reserve, but you can't vote to do that. That would have had to have been voted in March to put money into that. So I would have to say we could definitely check on that with the attorney, but my first gut reaction is that that would be providing benefit to another fiscal year with money appropriated for this one. So I'm not certain we would win on that.
I mean, but extending the logic of utilizing 24-25 funds to leverage the 25-26 budget year, we could take a look at projects that, or things that we could purchase on the front end. We could look at that. I would caution getting too excited about that, though, because we typically return between $400,000 and $500,000 to the taxpayers. which reduces their rate by, in the current world, it's about 6 cents on the 1,000. So if you return a $500,000, you're reducing everybody's, on the 100,000. It would reduce everybody's tax bill by 30 cents on the 1,000. And if you choose not to do that, basically the tax rate is that much higher when it gets set. So if you get a little...
Yeah, we don't want to have peaks and valleys,
Right.
certainly, but, and I'm sure there's only so much extra toilet paper and staples and papers you can buy early, but,
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking 150,000, it may be worth trying to buffer some of that.
Yep. Well, we can definitely take a look at what some options might be. And I think Jana mentioned in her financial, probably in about a month, we'll be starting to talk to you about year-end. We'll have a clearer idea of what the landscape is and what you can, and we'll probably have a better sense of what the real impact of the insurance changes are going to be. Because the other thing, excuse me, you have to keep in mind is that when you budget for insurance, you take what you paid this year and you add 6.5% like we did, but what you don't know until people actually do it is like what plan selections are people going to make? Like, did a lot of people get married? Did a lot of people have, so are they going from individuals to family plans? So it's not as easy to predict. So
Well,
just
shot to
some-
stat, the plans are completely different now than they expected to have, so, yeah.
Is there a case at all, this just thinking out loud, to be optimistic, that all of the insurers are going to have enormous premium increases for next year to get to these new reserve requirements that are being contemplated, but once they get there, they take their foot off the gas to an extent?
Well,
Or, I'm thinking out loud.
I've not met a lot of business people that think that way.
Well, but the pooled insurers are a little different in the sense that they're, I mean, believe me, there are certainly people involved in this equation with a profit motive, no doubt about it, but the actual pools themselves are, like Todd described, they're made up of their members, and I don't know, I guess I'm desperately looking for the silver lining here somewhere.
Well, I do think, in the most positive way to look at it, the idea of providing additional regulation and oversight of the insurance industry with the notion that it protects the long-term survival of it and minimizes the potential significant impacts on the members. So that's the premise. Unfortunately, it's the immediacy. So where I see the issue being is they're requiring these things to be made up all at the same time, and then you just don't know what's going to be left after you've done that. So what happened to New Hampshire Interlocal Trust is they reached out to all their members and said, okay, Newmarket, you pay 32%, Conway 40%, Gorham 65%, and everybody said, I'm sorry, we can't pay that. So they went away. And I just, the thing that I go back to is I think, the pooled insurers are nonprofit, or they're about providing health care to municipal and public employees. And I haven't heard from anybody in industry that doesn't think they need to increase their reserves. They all believe that, yeah, we have a problem. I think it's just how you solve it. So there's a possibility, I guess, that in an amendment you could go back basically to what Health Trust has said they're trying to do, which is over a period of 5 or 6 years, build their reserves back up like 1-2% a year, as opposed to what they did to New Hampshire Interlocal is make up 12% all at once, which means we got a very large bill.
I don't want to drag this conversation on longer than I should, but for the current clients of New Hampshire Interlocal, what happens to the reserve money they're carrying right now?
Well, the members of the group will be responsible for whatever liability is left. So even if New Hampshire Interlocal goes away, if they go away with a debt, the members will pay,
stuff to pay.
will make it up, because that's how pooled insurance coverage works. So frankly, in some ways, we're very lucky that we hadn't switched to them before, because we don't have a liability about the past. We only had to make up for the future. But the people who are making up for the past, you'll have communities that are seeking out a new health insurance provider they're trying to get a
Okay.
rate that's reasonable, but they're also paying off whatever previous cost may have been incurred. Yeah, and it's just very chaotic, so it's hard to predict what it means.
Just on the agenda, there's a public hearing next on April 23rd at
Okay.
at 1:30 PM. It's a public hearing.
Okay.
On the Senate SB 2,
Yes, yeah, it's in
279?
Building
And
302,
297.
304, yeah,
okay, thank you.
1:30.
All right, have we ground that one into the ground sufficiently?
we have.
All right. Thank you, Jana. And Todd. Title VI.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Been a lot of conversation about this, and Title VI assurances have definitely been very controversial. You may have seen the story about Harvard University making the decision to refuse $2.2 billion of federal money, largely over their unwillingness to abide by the executive order that was trying to define Title VI in a particular way. That same set of assurances is required of all school districts that receive federal money. I was on the NHED website earlier. There are 219 entities in the state of New Hampshire that have been asked to sign the Title VI assurances, and 164 have signed and accepted them, including Newmarket. Okay? I want to explain why, and by the way, I'm the one that signs on those assurances, so it was my decision, but I want to explain the logic in the decision. The titles, every year when, in fact, we're going to, later on in the meeting, you're going to approve what they call the general assurances, which are basically a document that the board chair has to sign and I sign that basically promises that if you give us money, we will follow the law and we'll spend it appropriately. That's basically what they are. Every year we have those. This year, and I think we can all be honest, it's driven by a political agenda. The Title VI assurances have sort of been pulled out and been used as a separate leverage of public entities receiving federal funding. And so basically what they've asked us, and they have been used because of one of the executive orders that came from the White House that basically is trying to make the DEIJ, diversity, equity, inclusion, justice concept illegal, okay? And the way they define that is that any program that favors one race over another is not allowed. As you heard me say earlier, we don't have any programs that do that. You'll see that there are a number of schools in the state that are engaged in the lawsuit. Specifically, I know Oyster River and Exeter locally. They both, and I used to work at Oyster River, so I'm very familiar with it, embrace the DEIJ concept. In fact, they created a position called a DEIJ coordinator. They embrace curricula that was driven by that concept. Most of the schools that are involved in it stand, if they sign it, they're basically saying, we will get rid of all of that. Okay? In Newmarket, we don't have any positions, policies, or programs that falls under this umbrella. Now, I will tell you I had to plug my nose to sign it, but we get $536,000 this year. We are getting $536,000 this year in federal funding. If you don't sign it, basically what it's saying is you will be subject to great scrutiny and probably will not get your federal funds.
That sounds like extortion.
I would not use that word, but you can.
I did.
So basically what it comes down to is while I acknowledge that there is a political agenda driving this, We are not promising to do anything that changes anything in Newmarket, okay? I think there are some legal challenges that are going on that will look at the very vague definition that has been thrown out about DEIJ programming. And I think that's the justification of the lawsuit, is that it's just vague. You're not giving us any guidance. But as I said, we do not have any programs, positions, or policies that are in any way contradictory to federal law. And we will monitor that, and we will continue to support kids. So the deadline for filing that was today. I will tell you, I signed it last week because the original deadline was April 10th. And then they changed it because of the lawsuit. But I want to tell you that it does not affect any program that we're running. I have had a few teachers reach out to me asking, what does it mean? In fact, Joanne and I had a conversation about it. I mean, it really doesn't. I mean, for example, we have an international we have a multicultural potluck, we have an international club, all of it. Those are fine. That's not going to be impacted. My fear in not signing them, to be honest, because we have had a lot of audits being done from the federal government that do deep dives into our information. And it is incredibly time consuming. I mean, in the finance office, Jenna has spent hundreds of hours this year collecting information to prepare for all of these. And it's all coming from that notion of really scrutinizing everything we're doing. I would be very concerned that we would face something similar to that for this if we did not sign it. So again, I want to emphasize, I plugged my nose and I signed it. Any thoughts, questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's incredibly disappointing to hear. What you're describing to me sounds like the textbook definition of appeasement. And I understand it's a tough decision that we have to make either way, but just to go off and sign it and to put your name to it saying this is something that we're behind it feels like we're caving without putting up any fight whatsoever and instead of standing on a principle.
I don't think signing it saying we're in agreement with it, right?
It's agreeing to abide by it.
Well,
It's saying that we do not have anything or will do anything that breaks the law, and it doesn't affect us in any way. I agree with you. It's
There's a
disgusting.
whole lot of people a long time ago that said this isn't going to bother me today, so I'll go along with it. But eventually, if they want to take the $532,000 away from us, it boils down to they're just going to take it away, and at some point, that's going to be a Band-Aid that has to get ripped off.
I mean, it's a fair point, and it's a disgusting situation to have to be in, and it is extortion, there's no question.
So that's how I feel about it. I do have that to say, and that's about all I have to say on it. I understand why you had to sign and why you felt compelled to.
Actually, please know, I valued that opinion, and if it weren't for the fact that I'm trying to manage the finances of this school system, and I felt that it was just my risk, I would not think anything of it, or I would think a lot of it, but I would be less concerned. But given all the other financial circumstances that we are facing, the insurance issue we just discussed, the potential loss of grant funding, and we haven't even talked, the tax cap potential, there's a lot of financial pressures that we're under to manage the schools and wanting to keep the programs we have going. I'm
History
with you,
informs us there.
I'm
History
with you.
informs
I'm with
us.
it, but there is room to protest and to do things without necessarily turning down the money. Because basically, not signing the assurances says I'm not taking federal money. And we're talking IDEA money, which pays for 3.5 of our special ed positions, Title I, which pays for two positions, and our Title II and Title IV money, which is basically our professional development budget for the year. So those are the things that were at stake.
Is there not a way that a lawsuit or something could have been put forth first, saying we really stand against this, we don't think this is legal, we don't think this is right, and so therefore I'm not going to sign this under duress, we're going to try and get a stay on this?
Right. There is a lawsuit that's taking place, and certainly if the courts make a ruling on it, we would still benefit from it.
Has Oyster River signed off on this? You know what I mean? Like, you mentioned that they're on the lawsuit. Have they
Correct.
signed this?
We can also rescind should a lawsuit come through and, find this to be unjust.
That's, yeah,
Yeah.
the fair weather follower kind of an approach. It's an unprincipled approach, I guess, is where I'm coming from.
Yeah, it's a tremendously challenging thing to navigate. It absolutely feels like capitulation. On the flip side, though, in the interest of everyone who works here and all the kids are here, you have to look at, I think personally, what does this actually cost us if in reality we're not going to change a thing about how we operate as a function of this? That's just my personal opinion. That's where I come down on this. I understand why Oyster River, Exeter, and Portsmouth are doing what they're doing, because they have created positions, they've created curricula, and there is a very semantic element to this. They chose to affix certain words to those activities, and as a consequence, they can't sign this without being in violation of it.
This is just the government stealing words away from us, though, talking about what we can discuss and how we can use those words in a school. That's like textbook First Amendment kind of stuff, and they're saying you can't use these words in school. When it's valid educational tools, and for us to, again, and I'm not going to harp on it, I really am not, because I know I've been clear about this, but for us to just sign off and say, yeah, that's all fine for us, because it doesn't harm us, that feels like at first they came for Oyster River, and then they came for Portsmouth, and then they came for us, and there were no schools left to stand up, right?
I get your point, and
Yeah.
I agree with you, but I think Oyster River and Portsmouth are able to absorb this in a way that we couldn't without either getting rid of a bunch of teachers or completely dropping SST as an option or seriously impacting the kids. If I thought this really was going to have an impact, like, you're saying to Oyster River or some other schools, then yeah, I think I'd agree with you. But I think at this point we need to consider our local community first.
The impact is still coming for us.
Oh,
I mean,
I don't think you're wrong.
If I could just want to be very clear about something. The assurances basically are saying we are going to follow Title VI. Title VI goes back to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And I would challenge anybody to say that they don't support the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the additional language.
I understand. And it's the executive order that is attached to it that is creating they're using the executive order and trying to leverage it with grant funding to force school districts and other public entities to go along with it.
Right.
But at its core, the assurances say we will follow the law as described in Title VI. That's really what it is. The fact that the Trump administration has defined what they defined through the executive orders that have been issued, that's not Title VI. And that quite frankly is what's being fought in the court, is like, what is covered by Title VI, and can an executive order tell somebody they can't use the word diversity to describe a position? You're 100% right about all of the semantics and all of that. But at its core, this assurance is about, are we saying we're going to follow Title VI? And the law was written in 1964, and nothing has changed in that law. And so basically, that's what we're abiding by, but unfortunately, it's being used as a leverage tool.
But signing this doesn't also mean we couldn't join on to that lawsuit, and support it and write letters to the government saying, so.
I do have a question about information sharing, because I actually had two community members ask me about Newmarket's stance
Right.
on Title VI. So I just didn't know if I should refer them to watch the meeting, if I
Certainly,
can.
this memo is an attempt to try to do that. I did put out, I've gotten questions from staff. I haven't actually gotten a lot from the community, but I certainly can put out a communication to the community if you
Well, I just
feel
didn't know
that's-
to what degree
we respond
Like,
to a,
I, as, like a school board member could share, like obviously
I mean,
with.
this is public information.
public,
You can-
okay.
You absolutely
That's
can
essentially what I'm asking.
explain. And frankly, if you go to the New Hampshire Department of Ed website, it's all there. Everything is there in terms of who's done what.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure how I want to say this, but given what's happened to the universities, like Columbia, they capitulated, but Trump still went after them. Is that a possibility of happening down on the local level, the local school district level?
I mean, the political environment we're in right now, I think anything's possible. If you'd asked me a year ago, did
Yeah.
I think that suddenly the insurance landscape was going to be flipped upside down, I would have said, you're crazy, that's not going to happen. So I think it's possible.
So then, do we have a Plan B? Have we forethought what might happen, even though you signed this now? Do we have an alternative, a backup? I guess that's what I should say.
Back up with regards to what are we going to do? for
That $500,000.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, no. I
Yeah.
don't know what the backup would be.
Right.
When we build a budget, we build a budget based on appropriations and we based on estimated revenues. And those revenues we estimate are based on what we have received in the past. So if
We lose
and
that
frankly,
500.
It's worth noting that there is discussion that the Federal Department of Ed is going to go away, and that all of the money that was previously allocated through the Department of Ed is going to be given out to states in the form of block
Block
grants,
grants, yeah.
and the state governments will decide. And without getting too into the weeds of things, I don't have a lot of faith, certainly in the current commissioner's office, to make the right decisions about how to distribute funds. So there exists the possibility that would be an issue.
I mean, but this is obviously for the next year, so should that occur, we've already made our budget. We could certainly cut positions, we could certainly have an emergency meeting and request more money from the town. I mean, there's options, none of them are great.
We should probably think about planning that as like a thing that we really address seriously. If we give it back after things calm down, then we give it back. But
It only takes
having
7 days
fund-
notice, I think, for an emergency meeting.
What's that?
I think it only takes 7 days notice to have actually, would it be an election or would it be? I don't know the exact mechanism. I'm sure we can find that out, but we can do it in a pretty quick turnaround, I think.
We could. And I mean, to some extent, we've become the victims of our own success. We've worked so hard to budget so tight to the need for the past few years, which, is what our constituents have asked us to do, to not raise a lot of money through taxes that we don't think is absolutely needed. And the good news is we've been very good at that. The bad news is we've been very good at that. So
Yeah.
we're in a situation where $500,000 is hugely detrimental
Yep.
if that were to go away. And I still, in spite of the risk, don't know that most people in this town would encourage us to think differently about it.
So I'm reading through this thing that got signed, and one of the things, I'm just going to read it so it's into the record here for us, because this did get our initials and our signature, and it says Part 6A and B, right? Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which you were pointing out, this dates all the way back to 1964, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin, including, and here's where things get different, including any guidance issued consistent with Executive Order 14151, titled Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI Programs and Preferencing. The White House, that's just the name of who did it. But so we're bringing that one in, and then later on it also says in B, that we're going to be following the Title IX of the Educational Amendments of 1972. And then it goes on to add, including with additional items from Executive Order 14168, which is the Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government. So we're signing off on that language saying, yeah, that fits us. And it's pretty gross language.
I
And I just want to point out that I know you're saying that it's only the old 1964 and the 1975 stuff, but they put right on here that something about we're restoring biological truth to the federal government. I mean, it's the most Orwellian sort of groupings of words that I can imagine. And I just, again,
Well, it is, and we don't have any input or say on the federal government, which is so ironic, right? They can put it in there, but there's nothing we're going to do about it.
I mean, that's the language from the executive order.
Yep.
And that's not Title VI.
right, but the signature that they're requesting, right? And
Understood.
the
But that's-
initials that they're requesting
But the
are with
ambigu-
this language. It's not the old language.
Understood. It is very
It
concerning.
freaks me right out, man. I'm going to be honest.
I think it freaks us all out.
Yeah, there's nothing comfortable about this.
Yeah.
No,
Regardless of which way you choose
But
to play.
that's why I point out, I know we're saying that we can do it really fast if push comes to shove. It might make sense sooner rather than later to get that $500,000 nest egg just set up. And that way, if something comes down where the policy is just, the directive is a non-starter. It's going to be harmful for our kids. It's going to be harmful for our community. Whatever it might be, we've already got that in the bank and ready to go. And we can just say, you know what? We don't need this.
I think that would cause a lot of anxiety and
Right.
freak the community out a lot. If we had to do it, I'd absolutely do it. But to do it proactively months ahead of when it could occur, I don't think would make sense. I understand your point, but
I mean, this is
Yeah.
occurring.
but us not receiving the revenues isn't occurring now. It wouldn't occur until next year.
We'd have them available just July 1.
Yeah, so I agree with you, but it's something we could probably do July 2 and have it for September easily.
Sure.
Yeah.
Also,
Okay.
yeah, I mean,
Point taken there. That is a few months of a ramp.
And we don't know what's going to happen between now and then with the lawsuit.
Yep.
Hopefully,
And-
And not for nothing, I think it's important to keep in mind that the DOGE, Office of Government Efficiency, has held up all federal grant money anyway. So there's a possibility that, setting everything aside, that what is
So we
supposed to
might
be
have kissed the ring and we still might not be getting the money.
There are so many variables, it is very hard to predict where we're going to end up.
all right, I don't want to
Yeah, I
squelch this
guess I'd just make
conversation.
one more final point, and I'm sorry, I know
Yeah,
I'm
no,
really running
go
it, but
ahead.
just for the newer board members, like, when we start expending money, it's kind of, we get a big chunk of money, not exactly, but, it's not like we have to say, okay, we don't have this 500,000 at the beginning of the year, we're screwed, right? I mean, we can shift monies around that we're bringing in,
Yeah.
because we don't have to expend whatever, the roof until June of next year, or something like that. So it's not like it's that dire, it's going to affect
Not
the budget immediately.
yeah.
Okay.
But I would say if we didn't have 536,000 on the front end, and that 536,000 pays for 5.5 positions, those 5.5 positions would immediately not exist.
Yeah,
Because you can't, if you don't know it's coming, you can't plan the positions.
if that's how we're going to absorb it, yeah.
Well, the grant money has to be used
Oh,
for
okay,
things.
yeah, you're right.
It's IDEA, it's Title I. So we
Yeah,
have
you're right.
various special education services that provide services
You're right.
to our kids, speech language,
So ignore what I say completely, because I think I was
And then
incorrect.
Title I is very specific to interventionists. It's our, reading tutors, it's our math tutors, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move along. I'm not going to make this take long at all, but I just put something on about following up on committee assignments. Mostly, I just want to make sure everyone's had a chance to touch base with whomever from the committees they're serving on, that nobody's wondering how to get in touch with the master plan committee, for instance. I'm just making that example up, but.
Because how do I get a hold of them?
Right,
Thank you, Ellen.
Does anybody feel like they're not quite sure where to start with an assignment they have? If so, Todd and I will be happy to reach out to the right people in town and make sure you get connected, but,
And Lonnie, you can help me with the negotiations there.
yeah. But
And then,
if you feel like you're
yeah.
adrift on something you signed up
And I would
for,
just- I would
just let
just-
us know.
Okay.
I would just call the school board, the Seacoast School of Technology.
Well, actually, you'll get an email from them for the next meeting. I go to those too.
Oh, okay.
So we'll be together.
All right, okay,
Have we
good.
let Pamela Carr know that we changed our?
Probably not.
Okay, yeah, that's, so actually, maybe this is
Thank
the
you.
point to stop on. So I I emailed the Budget Committee Chair to let him know we changed assignments. Do policy committees internal, SST, Todd can just reach out to the principal. Lonnie's keeping the same assignment on staff development. New Hampshire School Board Association, do we have to do anything to let them know?
The only time we've been involved is when we get to the state meeting, and we usually send a delegate, and it's usually the vice chair.
Okay. Board negotiation, that's internal. CIP, Gary, had any interaction?
No one's reached out to me yet, and
Is it
that doesn't
Bart?
start until,
Yeah,
it'd be
it
Bart. That
starts
doesn't start
later.
for a while, so yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Does Bart run CIP now for the town?
He would
That
be
sort of-
involved in it,
Yeah,
right?
he'll be involved. That
All right.
sort of fizzled out last year, so I don't know who they have.
Okay, I'll email Steve and just ask him who's running that now. Manifest signers is internal, negotiations internal. Kathy, you said you've made contact with the master plan with?
Yes,
Okay.
Ellen set me up with Bart, is it?
Yeah, Bart
Yeah.
McDonough.
Yeah.
And then the
Actually, a
last,
negotiating team, should the associations want to, or, yes, those groups want to reach out to us, they would reach out to the reps, so we probably should let them know,
okay,
Yep.
so they know who to email.
all right, thank you. All right, acknowledgement of donations. We want to acknowledge a very generous donation of $349 from NCEP to the elementary school to fund storage for program materials. I believe Joanne Lazarus, who was here earlier, had requested that and received that. So as always, our sincere appreciation to NCEP for their constant generous support for the school district. All right, action items. I would accept a motion to approve the minutes from the April 3rd, 2025 school board meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Gary. Motion from Gary.
Second? Oh,
Whoever.
We'll
Take your pick.
give that one to Jeff. I think he snuck in under the wire.
go next.
Oh, no, that's one with money.
What a great time I've been. Did anybody in looking, I think it's working again now, thank you. Did anyone, I didn't see anything looking through the minutes that looked off. Did anybody
No.
have any edits? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes from April 3rd, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstaining. All right, we are unanimous, 5-0.
Move we accept the manifest for April 17th, 2025, totaling $657,816.44.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Kathy, thank you.
You kept your word.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We're unanimous, 5-0. We have the pleasure of being asked to approve the nomination of Jennifer Drew for our school psychologist at the elementary school. Todd, if you want to say a couple of
Actually,
words?
I would like to say a couple of words. Jen Drew was employed in our district up until last year. She took a job at Greenland, and lo and behold, she discovered the grass wasn't greener in Greenland and saw an opportunity to come back, and so she reached out and
Wonderful.
she's returning. So we're thrilled to have Jen Drew come back. She spoke about how much she missed the culture of Newmarket, so it's nice to have her back.
All right, I'd accept a motion to approve the nomination of Jennifer Drew to be NES's school psychologist.
So moved.
Thank you, Lonnie. Second?
Second?
Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, welcome back, Jen. I'd accept a motion to approve the general assurances for fiscal year 2026.
So moved.
Thank you, Gary. Second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Kathy. Any discussion? Beyond the discussion that we've already had?
No, I won't take us down that road.
This is far less controversial, I would add. These are the ones that have existed for long before the current administration.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? We are unanimous. We have a staff requests for time off. They're in the packet if you want to look at particular, actually, no, I'm sorry, it's not in the packet. Todd, is there anything we should?
I can just run through it with you. I have one maternity leave, there's three requests. One that's a maternity leave request, one that's and I'm not going to give names, and if you want to ask questions, we can go to non-public. Maternity leave request, a medical request, and actually two maternity requests and one medical, so.
We seem to be inconsistent about the names because they're actually in the agenda.
But they're not in the public agenda.
Okay, I'm not
Oh, it says
signed in.
access public, okay. As
That's
long as
why I'm
you're-
not seeing it.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
All right. So I'd accept a motion to approve the staff requests for time off.
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Gary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're unanimous, 5-0.
I do have a question about when we have unpaid time off to approve. When is there a time where we can change that so that we do not have to
All of
approve it?
The unpaid time off is only in the para contract, and that is in negotiations this summer.
okay.
So you and Kathy will have a role.
We'll make a mental note on that one.
Okay.
Got it.
Fix her up. Last action item, a fun one. Because this is a field trip that leaves the state of New Hampshire, we're being asked to approve the annual second grade field trip to climb Mount Agamenticus in Maine.
So moved.
I'd accept a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Thank you, Gary.
Second.
Thank you, Lonnie, for the second. Any questions? I hope everybody has a good time on
Yes.
climbing the mountain.
Have fun.
It's a nice little day out. All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
I don't see the healthcare MOAs that you said we had to
They're
vote
right here.
those.
They're in
But
the
they're not
folder.
in the action items.
Oh, that's true.
And you said we were going to approve them, so.
Yeah. We need to add, we need
Okay.
to approve them. So
Okay.
can we?
Would the
add-
board be amenable to adding that, since we discussed it earlier, adding that to the action items to approve the MOAs?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Somebody should seriously, take to task the two idiots who put this agenda together.
I'll send a sternly worded letter.
Thank you, Jeff. So I'd accept a motion to approve the healthcare MOAs with our two collective bargaining units.
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Gary. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are unanimous, and again, thank you to both of our collective bargaining units for being flexible and also, being willing to move so quickly to get this in place.
Dan, before we adjourn, perhaps, could I make an amendment to my vote on the general assurances? As I'm looking at the document that's attached, I think I would like to abstain on that one.
Does anybody object?
You can also
to-
vote no. I mean, that's
Yeah.
more than fine to do.
I don't want to vote no, but I'd like to abstain at the very least.
Okay, understood. We will note that. 4-0 and 1 on that one. Did we need a non-public this evening?
Not that I have a reason for.
Anybody else see a need for a non-public?
Nope.
All right, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
Could I just remind
Yep.
people before, remember we have the retreat on
Yes.
Saturday
Saturday.
morning?
Yep.
Right across the hall in the library.
In the library?
The agenda is in board docs, so you can see there's a PowerPoint there with the agenda there. We're doing breakfast. The whole leadership team will be there initially. I've given them all clear guidance that I will dismiss them at 9:30 so they can have a Saturday. But they're there to kind of get a chance to have some roundtable conversation and so forth. So, 8:30 we'll get started. 9:30 it will be just Patty and I and you guys from that point on. Okay?
All right.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody giving up part of their morning to come be part of that. So with that, I'd accept a motion to adjourn.
Also move.
Thank you, Kathy.
Second.
Thank you, Lonnie. Don't be shy. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Don't forget to unclip.
Yeah.